37 years, 47 stab wounds.
The weapon used was a large kitchen knife. The blade was 12 inches long.
But something doesn't add up. Did this man murder his wife in a fit of rage? Or was Valentino Ianetti pressured into taking the rap?
This was a perfect storm leading to a false confession.
It had to have been you.
It had to be me or the butler. We didn't have a butler.
For now, this accused murderer is out of jail, but his heart is still in lockdown.
I lost 4 years of my life. I lost my standard in the community. I lost my standard in the business world. I lost my children.
Valentino Ianetti, accused of slicing his wife to death in a blood-soaked tirade on a wintry New Jersey night. But the grieving widower and father of 3 has quite a different version of events.
Why am I being charged with murder if it's a suicide?
And it turns out there's a case to be made for each.
A lot of it points to, a potential homicide, so I can fully understand why authorities went in that direction.
The manner of death is suicide.
I investigate both, beginning with the decades-long marriage of Pamela and Valentino Ianetti.
So it was unpredictable.
Unpredictable. She was a redhead, French, Welsh, and Indian, and I got along with my Italian background really well. We had some good fights, we had a lot of making up.
Pam was a devoted mother and dedicated nurse. But there were deeper problems, claims Ianetti. It started with alcohol abuse 20 years ago. Then Ianetti says Pam developed serious and painful medical issues. Then ultimately, a pill addiction.
She was on Oxycontin, Percocet or Percodan.
You told the police officers how difficult your wife made your life, they said.
At times. We had a problem with money. She loved to play with her credit cards.
Did she have a history of depression?
Before we got married, she was in mental health outfits. When we were married, she was in the B ward a couple of times, 2 or 3 times.
For his part, well, Ianetti admits he's no day at the park.
If I didn't meet her and marry her, the way in the directions I was going, I would have probably not been around here.
What do you mean by that?
I was a wise guy. I drank a lot when I was younger. I had a very bad temper.
He says during a couple of the bad times, Pam kicked him out and broke his heart.
I was lost without the redhead.
What?
I was lost without the redhead moping around.
And somehow they always found their way back together, reconciling at the time of her death.
So in the months leading up to all of this, what was your relationship with your wife like?
Pretty darn good. We were out in Colorado. We were going to a Christian therapist.
Right near the end, it was the best that I had seen it the whole time that I had known them.
Until it wasn't.
When was your emergency?
My wife just stabbed herself.
One December night, after falling asleep on the couch, Ianetti says he woke up to a horrifying scene.
I got up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, walked past the bedroom door, and there was a shadow on the floor. I backed up, and I found my wife on the floor.
He says his wife was lying in a pool of blood. A long kitchen knife was on the floor near her butchered body. Then he says he notices some startling movement.
She started reaching behind her, and behind her was the knife, so I thought she was grabbing for the knife. I don't know what to think at that point. I didn't need her grabbing the knife and doing something else with it.
She was still alive.
She was still alive, yes. I grabbed the knife, held it in the back of the handle, and went to the kitchen.
Ianetti says he put the knife on the counter and returned to his wife.
I went over there to give her CPR, and too much liquid was coming out of her mouth. I knew it was past my capabilities, so I called 911.
He sounds almost like a wounded animal. It's just there's just a lot of emotion in his voice.
Did you have any inclination about what had happened to her?
No, I had no inclination that she stabbed herself or if somebody else stabbed her. I know I woke up and didn't stab her. I didn't even know she was stabbed that bad. I just saw some blood around her neck. I did not know her chest was stabbed and anything else. I had no idea, no clue what was going on.
But you were sleeping just 20 feet away.
Not even 20 feet. I just woke up into this nightmare.
Ianetti is relieved when police and paramedics show up at his door. But it wasn't quite the entrance he had expected.
And I remember it was the cops knocking on the door, guns drawn, and then ordered me down on my knees. I don't know what happened. I woke up and saw her bleeding.
Valentino Ianetti says his wife of nearly 40 years took her own life with a butcher knife. Cops insist he's lying.
Valentino, please.
Okay.
That's worked thus far in your mind.
Okay.
Put that to rest. That's not what happened.
47 stab wounds. It seems hard to believe that's a suicide.
Any layperson is going to look at that and say, you know, it's laughable, this argument that she could have done this to herself.
I don't understand. Your wife seems to be a good family person.
You don't know that. You have never met her.
But you describe her as a loving wife.
I never described her as a loving wife.
You don't feel that she loves you?
There's a lot of turmoil in our life.
In any previous arguments with your wife, have you ever struck her at all?
No, you noticed the kitchen cabinet dented. I managed to hit walls and things instead of her.
But this time, cops say, after a bitter feud, Ianetti armed himself with a long kitchen knife and went on a rage-fueled frenzy.
You have Valentino there as the only other person there. They were quick to note that there was no signs of forcible entry. There were no footprints in the fresh snow.
Friends don't deny there was trouble in the home, but nothing that would lead to such a horrible act on Pam.
There was a very deep love between them that had gone back to when they first got married, and that had been there underlying all the difficult times that they had been through.
So do you think that he killed his wife?
No, absolutely not.
And through uncontrollable sobs, Ianetti unflinchingly sticks to his story, that he found his wife alive and bleeding, that he moved the knife to the kitchen and called 911. That Pam was a serious pill addict and reckless spender, mired in physical pain and emotional despair, leading to suicide.
She was depressed. I also asked her if she wanted me to call up the shrinky dent out in Colorado, if she'd like to speak to him. I do not know how to handle it.
Frustrated detectives try a different tactic to shake their suspect loose. They tell Ianetti his wife did not die.
She's at the hospital.
Is she okay?
Is
anybody fill me in on that?
She's coming out to pick you up, to bring you home, back to your home, where your kids are. Because she wants to grow old with you there. Don't you want to grow old with Pamela? Don't you want to see your grandkids grow up?
Yes, I do.
That's going to happen.
The police strategy? If Ianetti thinks his wife is still alive, she might rat him out.
Is Pamela going to blame you for this?
I don't think so. Other than maybe I was a but for the physical contact, I don't think so.
Pamela's going to tell him that she was sleeping in bed and you came at her with the knife. That's what, when she opened her eyes, that's what she saw. Nobody came into the house. There's no intruder.
No.
She opened her eyes, saw you over her, and you were trying to take her pain away or end it for whatever reason.
No, it's not for me to do.
To say his wife is alive and telling him he'll grow old with her, is that cruel?
It's cruel and reprehensible.
It sounds like emotional torture.
It is. It's torture.
Perhaps to some, but for law enforcement, such tactics are fair game in the pursuit of truth.
They want to create an atmosphere where somebody begins to doubt themselves. When you're presented with lies, the Supreme Court grants the police the right to lie during interrogations.
Then, cops break the awful truth.
Valentino, I have some bad news.
When?
I did not know, but Pamela passed away.
Now what am I going to do? I don't have my life anymore. What am I going to tell the kids? Oh, God, what happened? Igor had the hopes for the future.
For 21 grueling hours, police try to lure their suspect into a confessional trap.
You can't be man enough to discuss what happened. Pitiful. And I have no respect for that.
It seems some cracks are forming in Ianetti's armor.
Polygraph test? I don't know.
And if you took a polygraph test, would you pass it?
I don't know. You're saying I might have something hidden. All I remember was getting up and seeing her on the floor. Maybe it'll bring out the truth. I don't know.
I don't think a polygraph at this point is needed because I think we could discuss the truth right now.
Bring a psychiatrist in, put me under? I don't know. I don't recall anything. All I remember was getting up and seeing her on the floor.
Cops seize on Ianetti's apparent weakening.
What did I do? Lord, what did I do? Where's your memory at?
It's going to be the same thing over again. I'm praying to the Lord, ask him if I did this, prayed for guidance.
We see him breaking down over time, and he starts to pray a lot, crying, begging God to help him.
He was grappling for
But
answers.
Is that evidence of guilt?
Yes, it could be presented like that. But he's grappling with answers, and the police encourage that.
If detectives are trying to plant a seed of doubt in their suspect's head, it seems they've succeeded.
You lost your cool. You got pushed too far and you snapped.
How? Why? Why? I don't know why.
Yes, you do. You do know why. If you explain to me what happened, maybe I can figure out the truth.
They created a scenario where the only rational answer for somebody when they're told all these lies is to say, I must have blacked out.
And when detectives leave him alone, Ianetti seems headed for a breakdown.
Oh God, what happened, Lord? Please tell me. Father, our Savior, please shed light on this. Please tell me what happened. Yeah, I do it, Lord. Please tell me. Please help me. Help me, Lord.
Am I suppressing anything?
Well, I don't want to get anything out of you that you don't want out of you.
I'd like it out of me. I don't remember it.
After hours of grueling interrogation, Valentino Ianetti is reduced to self-doubt about his wife's death.
You remember. You remember it. You just blocking it.
The beleaguered suspect was no longer firmly and repeatedly denying he killed Pam.
What happened, Lord? Please tell me. Please help me.
Detectives seize on those words as an admission.
Look at how the cops reviewed that statement. They looked at that statement as confirmation that he did it.
It didn't help Ianetti's case that he was the only other person in the home at the time of Pamela's death. And he admits he moved the knife from the bedroom floor near Pamela's body to the kitchen, leaving his prints on the handle.
I think that very quickly they began treating him as the prime suspect because who else was there?
So I just have to ask this, was that a confession? Were you confessing?
To what? I wasn't confessing to anything.
Mm-hmm.
They had one agenda on their mind, the police. Convict me.
So you said, did I do this?
Yes.
Why were you asking if you knew that you hadn't done it?
Because after 15, 18 hours, people telling me I'm doing it, I'm doing it, I'm doing it, I started getting in doubt.
Somebody described to me it was like having a Mack truck sitting on their chest. That's how much pressure these people are under. And he never really admitted to it. I must have blocked. Dear God, I can't remember. He said it right up until the end.
And that's exactly what the Sussex County District Attorney had in mind. So did the state's medical examiner, ruling the case a murder.
The medical examiner's ruling was sort of a pivotal point in this case and sort of sealed Mr. Ianetti's fate. You don't have a homicide unless you have a medical examiner saying that this person was murdered.
Now at the age of 60, Ianetti is charged with killing the woman he was married to for more than half his life and sits in jail for nearly 4 years awaiting trial. His own children turned their backs on him.
Everybody has lied to my children. Their husbands, their children, their teachers, their doctors, everybody.
Left behind bars to grieve his wife alone.
Every time I visited him, he would break down in tears because he missed her so much.
And it won't get much worse thanks to a public defender whose independent medical expert makes some intriguing discoveries about Pamela the night she died.
She actually had enough painkillers in her system to kill her. It was plausible that she had enough in her system to numb the pain of any stab wounds without causing her to, immediately lose consciousness.
According to reports, all 47 wounds were in reach of Pamela's own hands and arms, and none were defensive wounds.
The crime scene was not in disarray. There wasn't a lot of evidence, if you will, of any kind of struggle that was going on.
But next comes the strongest case for suicide.
What's most compelling, I think, in the pathologist reports are the cluster wounds.
The clusters means that they were all in the same spot. Specifically in this case, they were all oriented in the same direction. They were all penetrating in the same direction.
An indication that Pamela was alone in one general area, inflicting straight parallel wounds upon herself.
What you would expect to see is when somebody is stabbing another person and the blade is going in, is the body is moving. You see a thing called fishtailing or trailing, where the wounds are jagged and they're moving in different directions.
Pamela suffered 22 stab wounds to the left side of the neck, 17 to the right side of the neck, and 8 to the torso, plus 3 fatal wounds to the liver, left lung, and heart.
There were no handprints, fingerprints, shoe prints to indicate someone else was involved.
And according to forensic pathologist Dr. Isidore Mihalakis, the majority of the injuries are what's known as hesitation wounds.
They are not deep wounds. These are superficial wounds, poorly directed under the skin.
The defense team gave its findings to the Sussex County DA, who in turn did something quite rare for a prosecutor's office. They got a second opinion, and it came from Dr. Mihalakis.
I don't believe that a perpetrator was there or could have done it, because she would have moved and she would have a different pattern of wounds.
Dr. Mihalakis thinks the combination of pills and a knife was Pamela's insurance. If one didn't do the job, the other would.
My final conclusion is the cause of death is multiple stab wounds. The manner of death is suicide.
In a stunning reversal, the DA's office dropped the charges.
The prosecutors are simply saying there's enough information here that causes me to pause and look at this case.
Ianetti is released, but freedom is bittersweet. The state's medical examiner and the police refused to change their conclusion of murder, and the prosecutor's office left itself open to recharge Ianetti in the future. In a lengthy response defending their investigation and decision to drop charges, prosecutors say in part, quote, "Although it is open, it is not under active investigation. Barring a new and significant development, it is not anticipated the matter will be actively investigated or prosecuted."
The prosecutor is not saying, based on what I've read, that the person is innocent. They're just saying they can't prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt, and there's a huge difference between those two things.
It's a world of difference for Ianetti.
So you are still known around town as a killer?
Well, as far as I know with the internet, I am overseas known as a killer too. The minute they start Googling your name, they find out that I was arrested for murder, charges. They don't want me around.
So it's difficult to get a job?
They don't want to take a chance.
Ianetti still has no contact with his children. He says all he wants is his family together again and a clean slate from the cops. He says the truth is on his side. There's just one way to tell it.
Did you murder your wife?
Oh, I did not murder my wife.